uses that had not previously been included in the code or discussed or addressed in any way. And modernizing home occupations, this is one that had quite a bit of discussion. That's an accessory use that exists in the current code. And then the proposed code was modernized in order to add some extra flexibility for residents who are interested in working for themselves. Additionally, we spent some time updating standards so that, for the most part, standards became more flexible and more permissive in most cases, but not all. We revised dimensional and site design standards, as well as landscaping standards. Spent some time really with use-specific standards, so that includes accessory dwellings, which are now allowed as both attached and detached units in the proposed code, as well as delineating or making a distinction between accessory buildings and accessory structures. Accessory structures are seen as having less of an impact, and so the standards there for them are a little bit more flexible. Lastly, we updated off-street parking and loading standards in order for to make sure that they align to the uses that they spoke to with the uses being addressed in the rest of the code. Moving to the subdivision code, the large priority here was updating processes, clarifying what needed to happen, and what different types of documents were required to be submitted at various points in the process. So processes that were addressed through this process include preliminary review of any sort of incoming application, a site plan review. There's a minor plat option included for subdivisions that have fewer parcels in the proposed plan. Adding a hearing for a final plat in major subdivisions, and an administrative approval for lot line adjustments. Other pieces of content that were discussed with the subdivision code include a parkland dedication ordinance and updates to what different types of standards are required. So it includes streets and sidewalks that will be required for future subdivisions. That said, I want to thank you to everyone who has taken time to go through this process so far and for the opportunity to work together. And we really appreciated the input from members of the community thus far, the planning commissioners, city council, and the opportunity to work with staff. Do you have any questions? I'd like to pass it back to the planning commission if there's any questions.
So no question, just a comment. I just want to say thank you for all the help you've provided for us over this little over a year. One of our key goals is to clarify and simplify the code, and I think we've really accomplished that so far. So thank you.
At this time, I will open the public hearing for both the zoning ordinance amendment and the subdivision ordinance amendment. If you would like to make a comment, please come forward, state your name and your comments. Thank you.
Melissa Zimmerman. Good evening. There's a lot of attention being paid to data centers and their impacts across Minnesota and across the country right now. And I think there's an important distinction that we need to understand before we put them in our zoning ordinances. When people, especially the older we get, hear data center, they picture a building with racks of computer servers. Those facilities have existed for decades, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about anymore. The city's proposed ordinance recognizes this itself. It defines enterprise data centers up to 20 megawatts and hyperscale data centers above 20 megawatts, specifically acknowledging that they can grow to 100 megawatts or more. We're no longer just talking about server racks. We're talking about enormous electricity demand, substations, switch yards, and extensive cooling infrastructure, backup generators, fuel storage, significant water usage, depending on cooling technology, wastewater, and equipment operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, creating noise, heat, air pollution, and impacting health, quality of life, and quietude. These facilities have fundamentally different impacts. Our definitions recognize that difference. I don't think our regulations adequately do yet. We need more teeth. We need meaningful data center-specific setbacks from homes. We need standards addressing noise, including low frequency and nighttime noise, water and wastewater, cooling systems, electricity, generators, fuel storage, infrastructure, and full build-out. And those requirements should and those requirements should increase with the intensity of the facility. A traditional low-impact data center shouldn't necessarily be regulated like a 100-watt mega hyperscale campus. But a hyperscale data centers shouldn't be regulated like traditional servers that are built today either. That's especially important when we're talking about location. Enterprise data centers of up to 20 megawatts are proposed as conditional use B2 and B3 business districts. And when industrial property is adjacent to residential property, the ordinance has a general 20-foot landscape buffer. Zoning can also change. We should not find ourselves someday trying to figure out after a project has arrived how to protect nearby homeowners from 24/7 noise and other impacts because our ordinance didn't establish the adequate protections beforehand. Zoning isn't about banning development. It's about deciding where developments belong and protecting the people who already live there. So I'm asking you to slow this portion down. Give the public an opportunity to work with planning and zoning to develop clear, tiered, data center specific standards before developers come to Owatonna. Then residents know they're protected. The city knows what it can require, and the developers know the rules before they invest. Let's get the rules right first. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kate Pelkey. I just wanted to add a comment that I think a lot of us are concerned, especially with the taxpayers. Taxpayers shouldn't have to subsidize this, not to mention the detrimental effects it can have on our environment, especially wildlife. I guess I would urge you guys to not even entertain this idea. Owatonna residents are taxed enough. So I would just like you guys to keep us in mind, the taxpayer, for this. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Sanchez. I'm actually currently running for City Council in Ward 3 here in Owatonna, and I wanted to just make sure that, again, one more person to add a note here. I think that we are thinking forward in making sure that we are planning for any proposed building that would come into play when it comes to data centers. I think that the work that was done as far as zoning did need to be done. From what I understand, it had been 50 years since it was done the last time. So thank you for doing that, because it does set us forward towards where our community should be going, making sure that residential, the residential piece is looked at as well. People aren't forced into having to have specific specifics in their home. We're allowing for some of that freedom and making sure that that's put into writing. So I am very grateful for the work that you guys did for that, and I am grateful that we're bringing it up now before perhaps, and maybe I'm not aware that there are people that are presenting or proposing to our town to build here, again, with regards to data centers. I think what people are concerned about is we're seeing it happen thousands of times across our country. They're seeing, proposal after proposal, build after build, and a lot of devastation that happens. And I'm not here to tell people. Eventually, I believe that if there was to be a proposed data center, it should be voted on. So I'm not here to tell anybody yes or no, yay or nay. It's not my job. That's their job when they go and vote for it or not. But I think the biggest thing that we need to make sure that we're doing as a community is that when we say that word, when we say data center, we need to make sure that we are giving people explicit, we're sharing with them whatever the guidelines, whatever we're looking at that these data centers would need to abide by. There were some really great details that you gave me, Ms. Emma, about, light, and all the different emissions that are, that you guys, that have to be addressed. And I really appreciated that. So I think what needs to happen is we need to make sure that we are sharing what we do have, but that we're also really taking time to plan out every single thing. Whether we talked about setbacks, we talk about noise, we talk about light, we talk about, again, resource implications. If there's no, conditions, if there's no, ordinances that are really straightforward for people to look at, they're gonna get very concerned, very, like we are already. We see it over and over. We need to make sure that folks are able to see in black and white what the town, especially the planning commission, is going to do to protect them, to see that even before anything else goes on, making sure that we are taking it a phase at a time, addressing concerns, and making sure that we're actually really looking at ordinances in place and regulations that they are going to have to abide by. And again, ultimately, the fact that the taxpayer isn't having to foot the bill. So I just want to make sure that if there's a way that we can create that transparency, I'm sure that there's a lot that you guys have thought about when it comes to this. How can that be clearer to people, and is it enough? So, thank you so much.
Kurt Welker, had some few comments on the zoning code. I talked to Greg about it a little bit earlier. In the, there's a provision in there for 3 and 4 season porches that allow them within 20 foot of a back property line, but only if they're on stilts. Well, as the homes we build move to slab on grades, we're not allowed to use that exemption because we don't have anything below the floor. The houses aren't raised up to be able to put the porches on a pier foundation. So, at a minimum, changing that to an exception with if it's a slab on grade home, that porch would be allowed at 20 feet instead of 30, would be a big plus and a great amenity to a lot of homeowners, a lot of our seniors. Sidewalks, there's a lot of streets that really don't need sidewalks. Sidewalks, a 75-foot lot, sidewalks will add $4,000 to the cost of that lot. We already are saying that lots are too expensive in Owatonna. It's actually, let me rephrase it. It will add $4,000 to the cost to develop that lot, which will add $5,000 to $6,000 to the retail cost of that lot, because as a developer, we're gonna have to finance that, carry it, pay taxes on it, and hopefully make a profit on the extra investment that we have to make. So I've got a 22 lot subdivision. That's $88,000 just for sidewalk. And actually they're bigger, they're 100-foot lots. So those are gonna be over $5,000. So that's $110,000 extra in costs that it would cost me to develop those lots. We're already saying that we don't have enough lots in town. Park dedication fees, again, same thing. If I gotta pay $3,000 or $5,000 per lot in a park dedication fee, well, that's gonna increase the price of that lot. Simple economics 101 tells you, as you raise the price of a product, the demand for that product decreases. So if you want more development in Owatonna, the best way not to get it is to increase the cost for us to develop. So simple economics, it's you know, it's cast in stone. 26% of the cost of a new home, average new home, about $108,000 on a $400,000 home, is the result of fees and regulations placed on that by state, local, and federal government. Well, the $4,000 per lot for a sidewalk or more, that's a part of that $108,000 per home that is gonna be added to the cost of a lot. Nationally, every $1,000, the average price of a home goes up. 175,000 families are priced out of that home. So just, you can boil that down to Owatonna, and it's gonna price, for every $1,000 we raise the price of a home, it's probably 100 families that are priced out of being able to afford the average home. So it's just some things to think about, and these are hard facts. These aren't supposition, or I'm not plucking things out of the air. You can look this up through the National Association of Home Builders, Robert Dietz, the Economist Report. It's all black and white, hard data that supports all this. Additionally, the Section 107, the Road to Housing Act, housing just passed in DC a couple months ago. I don't know if any of you read it or looked at what's in it. Section 107 of the Road to Housing Act directs HUD to develop national best practices for state and local land use and zoning reforms to increase housing production. Wouldn't it make sense to wait for HUD to come out with their best practices to be used on a national level before we make all these changes? Because HUD could say, if you don't follow our best practices, we're not going to finance anything in your community. So we could be doing all this again in a year or two when HUD comes out with their best practices. So in some ways, we may be getting the cart ahead of the horse. There's several things on the Section 209 that creates a grant program for local governments to adopt pre-approved housing designs, so you can that have been passed through all the codes and everything. There's Section 208, a grant program for communities that achieve measurable housing supply gains. There's a lot of things in that Road to Housing Act that could benefit Owatonna, but the zoning ordinance we may be passing may be in conflict with those. So again, you know, it may make sense to wait till we get the HUD guidelines and some of these things before we make a whole lot of changes and then find out we gotta make changes again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Nick Bodley, I'd just like to speak about the data centers. I would like to propose that we do more strict requirements on the zoning in regards to the diesel electric generators that kind of can and can't run, and maybe perhaps even the quantity that they could use, because again, you know, they're just going to be constantly making noise, and depending on where they are, it could really affect the wildlife or the people that live there. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Christopher Miller. I just wanted to speak on the hyperscale data center part of the zoning. I'm vehemently opposed to even including this in zoning. I think that these projects are deeply inappropriate for our area, and that the resource use is extreme. There's been documented lack of transparency in other communities with non-disclosure agreements and the like. I didn't really know about this meeting until this afternoon, and so I was pretty surprised about it. There's concerns about clean energy and environmental disruption with these, and I think it's not appropriate to include the hyperscale data centers in our zoning code until we have a much greater review and a better regulatory framework for these. I also am curious where these documents are available to the public. to see the specifics of what's being proposed, even with these zoning changes. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gail Jorgensen, and I wanted to talk about a couple of things. First, your zoning for the historic areas of Owatonna near downtown, where you have high residential. I'd like you to rethink it and have maybe more of a medium range, but also language that for the historic areas, that any new developments would blend in. And it can be done, you know, it just needs to be done thoughtfully. And then I, who am a descendant of farmers and woodsmen and mariners, want a slingshot from the past into the future about data centers. I'd like you to slow it way down and think thoughtfully about zoning for data centers. I personally would like to see Steele County Data Center with big mega data centers free. I'm originally from the Owatonna County of Wisconsin, which is a little north of Milwaukee. And they have pushed into the community a huge hyperscale data center without letting the residents know and the concerns. I also have family in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, same things going on, and family in Texas. I'm hearing all sorts of stories, but also the research and the data on the internet does support what they're saying. We are stewards, all of us here, I would say a big majority, probably are descendants of farmers. But we are stewards of the land. Even if we're now counties, we are still stewards of the land. We are stewards of the water table, the rivers. And data centers disrupt the water table. It makes more energy, it requires more energy, and of course then it's harder for everybody to live with the bills. The noise and light that they put off. And maybe for us, maybe they don't need to have that much light on their building. And the vibration, all of these things. And this other gentleman, I think his name was Kurt Walker, had brought up about HUD was going to have their best practices. Perhaps HUD too will have information on data centers, on the setbacks and the requirements. So if we slow it down and do more research and educate not only people who are in position, the city staff, the elected officials, the appointed officials, but also the community, so we can be joined together with what we want. And I know it's not going to be easy. I know there's going to be a lot of conflict, but through that conflict, there'll be a solution. It's not going to be easy. You know, it'd be very easy not to listen to people and just slide it under the table. I'm asking you to respect us, who have hired you, who asked for you to be appointed or elected you, and work together. And like I'm saying, it's not going to be easy. So if you're up to the challenge, we certainly are. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jack Walburn, and obviously, like, just moving past the environmental effects of a data center, anything else, strictly, I think from like a money-making or business aspect of Owatonna and its growth, I feel like there's a billion other better alternatives we could choose. Another business we could slot into that area instead of a data center. You know, because I mean, obviously, the environment is important, but also we want this town to, you know, keep growing or maintain what it's got going right now, which, you know, I think a lot of you guys up here would probably agree with me that that's one of the core things about this community, is making sure that we're prospering and not, you know, going in a downward trajectory. And I feel like we shouldn't even consider the data center, just even from a business perspective. It just wouldn't be profitable. I mean, if anything, all it would really give to us would be increased taxes on our energy. You know, we'd have to pay more on your electricity bill, and even city council members, it wouldn't just be like us as a community that would have to pay it, it would be affecting everyone. And I think that's something, you guys should definitely consider, even if you're not already considering what these good fellow citizens have brought up. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Brittany Jacobson, and I live nearby here. And from what I understand, that is where proposed zoning for a data center would possibly be, out off of like Lamond and that area, where we have an increase in our town happening anyway, as far as, like, I'm in the Allen Avenue apartments, right? We already have a lot of light pollution from Lifetime going over there, from a couple other businesses across 35. We already have a smell problem on this side of town too, from our lovely neighbors of, I think it's KLM now, the dog food plan. You know, I think there's other things that we could really push forward, like the gentleman before me was chatting about. This is a family town, and if a data center comes in, I fear that families will leave because they don't want to deal with the noise, they don't want to deal with the light pollution. They'll question their water, which is already questionable as it is, because that's where we live now in 2026, water is becoming questionable, which sucks. So the less we can do that, and the more we can do to push forward great ecological survey of where new businesses are going, and understanding what the land is in that area, not just like, well, it can work here because we don't have these things here, but actually doing like the hard work. I think that's important. And also taking money in schools. There's a bunch of examples down south where there's been data centers that have gone in, and it's nearby schools, and it is impacting them to the point of some schools needing to shut down because there's not enough electricity. We already push the boundaries for how like many students per teacher we have. If we lose a school because of a data center, we're gonna be in the same boat. And then what are we gonna do? We don't have enough room in town for buildings right now. We would have to build a new one further away. I've got a 1.5-year-old. I'm looking forward to trying to stay here, and that doesn't make me want to stay here. And also, I guess I didn't realize about the other zoning portions of this, but maybe some incentives for starter homes. It would be great, because we've got the same kind of stuff that was happening in the 50s, kind of happening now, and a need for starter homes for the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes instead of these 400, 500, 600K houses that just like, I'm sorry, aren't for the average Owatonnan. I don't work at Federated, I don't work at any of the big businesses in town. I'm a freelance filmmaker, and I make good money when it's good, but AI is killing my work. So I don't need it to kill my home too.
The public hearing has been closed. Now at this point, commissioners, do you have questions or comments? And we are looking to republish a notice for more than 30 days out for entering.
Well, a couple things, I guess, just to be clear, I think there's a lot of assumptions that this is about a data center getting built. We've got no data center getting built that I'm aware of, so we're just working on trying to plan ahead as we work as our ordinances. Data centers need to be addressed in our code as a use that is trending and moving forward. So we do need to be able to address that, and that is what we're trying to do. A couple of things that I would like to take a look at over the next the next month or so would be, certainly data centers in the commercial districts. I think we've got maybe, let's call it a 20 megawatt, limit out there. I would like to look at maybe that number might be too large. and, you know, looking at if we can drop that to a 5 or a 10 or, you know, whatever the number is, but I wanna examine that a little bit further. And then also, I think the intent when we wrote this, was that the commercial district data centers, would be accessory uses to something else, and then they tie in with another use that's there. So I think we need to readdress how we look at that. It came across in the ordinance that it's just a straight conditional use permit to build on any lot. The intent was it was an accessory there. The other, you know, as far as the other side of things, you know, the industrial park is where we have that certainly scoped in our industrial uses. So, you know, I'm fairly confident with that. You know, we've talked a lot about our design standards and how everything comes into there. Those certainly are in play. And then just also the final one, within our subdivision ordinance, we do require that developers pay for all their own infrastructure. Certainly anybody, we do have an out in there that they can ask the city council for assistance and what that may look like. But you know, the code requires that developer pays their own way, and that's on any development within the city, not just, you know, whether it's a data center or an apartment building or anything else like that. So certainly trying to set that up going forward, but number of things to certainly consider as we keep moving forward, as well as some comments that we got during the open houses as well. But you know, from our side of things, certainly we can discuss it more. But as far as a staff recommendation, we would recommend that we postpone this for 30+ days. And essentially, what we will do is we will renotice this when we come back to the public hearing and move forward. But you know, we certainly needed to draw out some of the comments and to be able to work through some of this stuff. You know, that's the good thing about it, is we will continue to work through this process. Yeah, it might extend us a little bit longer, but it's the right thing to do as we keep trying to draw some of this out and look for it. So we've heard some new things today, and I think that was certainly the goal. So how can we do that and continue to move forward? So that's certainly our recommendation. Would be to postpone this for 30+ days, allow us to work through some of these things, look at some of it, gather a little bit more data, and then we would recommend that we renotice this again. Basically, we're starting from scratch, moving through the public hearing process and the formal adoption.
Have you talked to OPU throughout this process, and their capacity limits, things like that?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, you know, any development project that goes forward, you know, OPU is certainly involved in any of the utilities and what it looks like and what they can do as follows their master planning as far as water, gas, and electric and everything. Obviously, the city doesn't influence that. Those are development items that don't go in a zoning ordinance. If it's out of capacity, then that's on the utility to inform them of that, you know, and move forward. But those things don't go in zoning ordinances, generally speaking. But we consistently work with OPU and kind of know where they're going, what they're planning, what they're looking at, moving forward. But that's certainly up to them and their commission.
And there are probably not a lot of cities that are even dealt with this yet, as far as actually formalizing something and putting it in definitions. We're kind of sort of ahead of the game here, as much as we can.
I wouldn't say we're leading, but I would say we're, you know, in the first half of the race, I guess is the best way to put it. One other thing to point out is, commissioners, you were all handed a packet prior to the meeting of emails that city staff received. Those will be entered into the public record as part of the hearing tonight, but just wanted to point those out to you as well. So you were handed those before the meeting. I don't expect you read them all already, but they are there.
Chris, I'd like to thank the public for all the comments. It's very helpful. That's what we're here for, is to hear your feedback and to make sure we're setting the direction that people in the city want. So that's what we're here for. And ultimately, when it comes to zoning and ordinances, a lot of it is trying to make the best use of the land we have, taking the considerations of their neighbors. So that's ultimately the goal, is to make sure we're listening to everybody. So with that, I would make the motion to postpone the vote for another 30+ days, so we have time to digest these and consider additional changes to our ordinance. I'll second that.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the downtown parking committee requests. We have two of them. We have the Rose Street parking stall removal. Writer Emma, fill us in, please.
We have two requests of the downtown park group here. The first one is a request on Rose Street, Rose Street West. So this stall here, shown right here, for reference, this is the Blast Taco Real Disco in the northwest corner. And so this stall right here is within 20 feet on a crosswalk. Technically speaking, this is an illegal stall and it needs to be removed. And so the city engineer and the county engineer are requesting that this stall be removed. And so I just wanted to be clear as part of this process to come through the downtown parking group committee. And that way we can formally recommend it and go forward, and the city council can do their formal removal as they move forward. But the city engineer as well as the county engineer are both recommending that the stall be removed in its proximity of the crosswalk.
Do you need a motion from us?
Yes, we do need a formal motion on this.
All right.
I agree that part is all dangerous, make a motion to.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The second parking committee request is the Ted G. Ringhoffer Drive Hour designation.
The second request is Ted G. Ringhofer, and that's currently under reconstruction behind to the west of the Ascent 2 building. It's expected to open up in September. With the relocation and redirection of the street, staff is hoping to rededicate this area as a 48-hour parking stall as we move forward. So all of this parking along the street down here currently is identified as 48-hour parking. What Walnut Avenue and the parking lot used to be down there. So we are recommending, based on the planning commission's discussion at the Vine Street parking lot, that we strike this and sign it regulated as a 4-hour parking area along this. Other options would be 2-hour or 24-hour as we continue to move forward. But staff is comfortable with 4-hour and feels that that's a good designation as we move forward in this area. It's certainly something we looked at. We don't really know how this is going to function in reality because it doesn't exist yet, but we do need to, with the expected opening around September 15th, we do need to have a designation and a regulation on that. So with that, staff is recommending 4-hour restriction for Ted G. Ringhofer Lane Northwest.
Can you remind us what the designations are on the Vine Street parking?
The east half, which is up next to downtown, is a 4-hour designation. That was changed from originally we had that at 2-hour. You guys had asked if we could go to that 4-hour, gives people a little bit more time to get around. And then the east half of that lot is a 24-hour with a kind of like a, let's call it a snow emergency removal, so residents can park there. It's important to know, this project specifically, this is the public parking in this area. There is parking underneath the building, as you recall, as well as a private parking lot, we'll call it up top as well, but this is the public parking at the bottom. So
this September 15th date, because that's when they open up the streets open by then.
Correct. They're hoping to pave that week. I mean, obviously that's a lot of weather dependency, but I believe they put the class 5 down today. And curbs have been poured for a week plus here, so hoping to pave that and move. The west half against the river will be open. I think the east half will probably take a little bit more time because they're going to need that for some staging area for that construction. But we should be able to get the street, the travel lanes, and the parking open against the river.
Make a motion to approve the 4-hour parking designation.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're on to other business. We have zoning and subdivision ordinance process updates.
Yeah, really no updates. We've talked about it already tonight, and so we'll certainly go back to work there, and we'll renotice the hearing as we move forward and see where that takes us in this whole process. So we'll we'll keep plugging along in that road.
Next item is the building permit updates.
Building permit updates, really, you can see the permits issued there, we're at 13 new homes, slightly under where we were permit wise, and about 5 million shy of where we were valuation wise in 2025, but still looking all right for this year as of this time, so.
Any updates on previous items?
The council approved the vacation request for the homeowner along St. Paul Road, that we were working through there, as well as the conditional use permit amendment for Chris Bainey and those storage units on that commercial space, putting commercial space in that building, so council acted on both of those.
Our next meeting is scheduled for September 8th. Do we have any upcoming items for that meeting?
We do have a public hearing scheduled for that night on request, I believe that Emma sent out. We're still working through a number of things there, but that was noticed today, so we will have a meeting that night.
This time, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye.